Good evening, Montrealers, Torontonians, and those joining us from across the country on behalf of OMETS, the Azrieli Foundation, and all of our partners listed on the screen. I'm pleased to welcome you all to tonight's webinar, Disabilities and Opportunity in a Pandemic. Without further ado, we're going to begin this evening's program by hearing from Harriet Witchen, CEO of the Miles Nadal JCC of Toronto, followed by welcome remarks from OMETS of Montreal's CEO, Dominique McCaughey.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dominique McCaughey, and I'm the CEO of OMETS here in Montreal. Welcome to our inaugural webinar, Disabilities and Opportunity in a Pandemic. Bonjour à tout le monde et bienvenue. Tonight, we are turning our attention to the individuals and groups in our community who have faced added challenges during these uncertain times, families of youth and young adults with disabilities. And when I say young adults, I'm talking about our grown children, the ones who may be aging out of the public system, but still require coordinated community support. It's the reason why we created l'Annexe, our brand new OMETS Center for Youth and Young Adults, to fill the gap in services and provide a place of inclusion so that all may be given opportunities in life to reach their full potential. So at a time when our usual support structures have crumbled, and when many parents find themselves feeling isolated, stressed, and overwhelmed, and when they need more support than ever to deal with the loss of routine, heightened anxiety, and other challenges created by the pandemic, tonight's panel is about hope. It's about opportunity. It promises to be informative, inspiring, uplifting, offering advice on available resources, tools to help us, and most importantly, a sense of connection, to know that we are not alone. That as agencies, we will continue to be that open door, whether physical or virtual now, addressing the most pressing needs in our community, be they in Montreal or in Toronto. Before we get started, on behalf of OMETS and l'Annexe, I want to begin by acknowledging our very dedicated partners, the Miles Nadal JCC in Toronto, Federation CJA here in Montreal, UJA Federation of Greater Toronto. Thank you for making tonight a uniquely Montreal-Toronto collaboration, and it's my understanding that our participants and our audience is even broader than that, thanks to Zoom. So welcome to all. I also want to thank our many promotional partners and of course the Azrieli Foundation for their generous support. And to our special guests for sharing your knowledge and your stories with us tonight. Our moderator, Paul Kowalski of Giant Steps School of Montreal, Dr. Yona Lunsky, Director of the Azrieli Adult Neurodevelopmental Center at CAMH, Dr. Tara Flanagan from the Department of Educational and Counseling Psychology at McGill University, and a very big and warm welcome to our parent from Toronto, Kathy, and young adult from Montreal, Esther, who are sharing their lived experience with us. Thank you all. And now, without further ado, please welcome our moderator, Paul Kowalski, Head of Marketing and Communication in Montreal's Giant Steps Schools. Welcome, Paul, and over to you.
My name is Paul Kowalski. I worked 15 years in news for CTV News Montreal. People in Montreal might know that. Over in Toronto, a lot of people from both Toronto and Montreal and even beyond tonight. So that's great to hear. So I did work for CTV News here in Toronto. That's who I am. But back in August, I left CTV for a new opportunity to work on different community projects with different partners and try to make a difference, as so many of you here today are trying to do as well with Giant Steps here in Montreal. As many of you might know, as some of you might not know, Giant Steps is a school and advocacy training and support organization working on some pretty big things these days. It's just a great organization. And tonight, I'm proud to be representing Giant Step School in this role to support this cause for neurodiverse families here tonight. Giant Steps, of course, always proud to be collaborating with OMETS and partner organizations to try to help, this is what we're trying to do here tonight, help expose, if we can call it a silver lining of the pandemic, to discuss possibly achieving silver linings in this pandemic. And I guess, to start things off, we are starting off on the right foot, because I guess one of those silver linings is how easily it is to gather virtually and create these moments by bringing people together for a common purpose. Easily, sometimes not so easily if you're facing technical problems, but of course, we're all here, and I hope everybody hears me. I'm not getting any panic texts, so I think it's going well at this point. So we're here for a conversation. And we're here to talk about, of course, an important issue: how neurodiverse families are coping in this time of COVID, research related to COVID. We don't have too much time, so I'm gonna try to get going as soon as possible, just to go over how things will work tonight. And at this point, maybe the panelists can start unveiling themselves to the audience. A pretty good turnout tonight as well, so I thank you all for being here. While I'm talking about the first polling question, if the panelists could allume, as we say here in Montreal, there'll be 3 polling questions throughout the course of the night tonight. And they're pretty important, these questions. They allow the organizations on the call here tonight to get to know you and to help the panelists and partners learn, of course, what's important to you, and that in turn will help us in establishing the direction we might take in the future, and maybe the direction we'll take the conversation in tonight. So quite important. So I'm going to introduce poll question number 1. We want to know, basically, it's a pretty simple one: who's joining us tonight from the community? What category most accurately describes you tonight? You could click 1, or you could click all that apply. So are you a parent or caregiver, a family caregiver? I guess the distinction between the first 2, formal or informal, a young adult, a professional working in health, social services, or research, or other. So if you could answer that poll question, there'll be 2 others throughout the course of the night. We'll be most grateful. Also, before we give the floor to our panelists for the next 30 minutes or so, and in your questions to our panelists. If you like using the chat feature, we'll monitor that, and we'll do our best to address those questions in the latter part of this evening during the Q&A period. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our panelists: Dr. Tara Flanagan, Dr. Yona Lunsky, Esther, and Kathy. Now, you heard Dominic there explain who they were a little earlier. We'll get into it, of course, a little more as we continue this conversation. So let's begin with some questions for Yona and Tara. So thanks for being here, first of all. It's a real pleasure to talk to you virtually. Are you guys, is the audio working? Everything okay?
Yes, thank you. Very happy to be here.
I think Yona's muted, actually.
I'm unmuted and happy to be here as well.
Beautiful. That's great. So we're rolling now. So this is good. Maybe we could start. This is a question I guess both of you can answer. Obviously involved in research. Please tell us about the kind of research you're involved in that may impact the lives on this call. Maybe Tara, we'll start with you.
Sure, thanks. And thank you again. I'm really excited to be here. I was thinking about this, and for me, the things that would be most impactful for those on this call would be the work around advocacy that I'm doing, particularly for people whose perspectives and voices really do not get amplified generally. So we really look at ways to advocate for yourself at school, at work, and in the community, as well as working with caregivers and other loved ones to be able to be involved in that advocacy process. And other projects also looking at inclusive employment, as well as ways to really work collaboratively together with all important stakeholders so that everybody has a voice.
And essentially from that advocacy perspective, COVID, what have you been doing in your organization to support neurodiverse families, including informal caregivers? A huge challenge for informal caregivers right now. Within this context of COVID-19, can you share some examples of how, what steps you've been taking to help in this situation?
Sure. And I really appreciate the focus on informal caregivers, because I think these actually end up being the most influential in people's lives. These are the people we rely on the most. We are starting self-advocacy workshops in the winter semester. And now that we're doing them on Zoom, we might be able to include people from outside of Montreal as well. So that might be of interest for people on the call. We are also doing parent support and sharing activities, really to be able to talk about experiences, at the same time be able to share tools and successes and to support one another. And we, throughout this process, have been getting very creative and finding ways really to promote inclusion in an online format. And it's been fun. So there have been some opportunities in this, unprecedented time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Yona, what about you? What kind of research are you involved in that may impact the lives of those on this call?
So pre-COVID, my focus in my research was looking at mental health for people with neurodevelopmental disabilities and their families, particularly in adulthood. So I guess that interest around young adults has been part of the work we've done for a long time. And I also have a research program that looks at healthcare more broadly in disability. So I think what that meant pandemic time was thinking about how we sort of pivot quickly to support the mental health of this community during COVID. And looking at kind of working with three groups of people. So working with young people, working with their families, and also working with healthcare providers to figure out, what are the best things we can do to help everyone's mental health be sort of as good as it can be. And also to really help healthcare communication, and particularly communicating around COVID, if there's a reason to go to the hospital, whether it's for COVID or other things. So sort of just interactions with healthcare, how to make them go better.
Mm-hmm. Of course, social opportunity is very key. Navigating that is key to anyone's mental health. Really, connections often identified, of course, as a challenge for neurodiverse young adults in particular. Now we're in this virtual world. Can you tell us what you've seen that has been working in this weird Zoom existence? And is this a benefit, do you think, or is it a disadvantage for these youth?
So I know we were actually, interestingly, some of our research was looking at using virtual. So we were doing, for example, a project on mindfulness, where we were first delivering mindfulness in person. And then we discovered there weren't enough places with experts doing mindfulness to do it all in person with these families. So we switched to doing it on Zoom before everyone else was using Zoom. So we're kind of ready, knowing how to do digital sort of interacting with young people and with their families. And then we just kind of expanded that. And I think what we learned, two things. One is that if you have a kind of growth mindset, there's a lot of things people can learn that maybe they didn't think they could. So I think if all of us think about logging into this webinar today versus if we would have held the same webinar in April, I think a lot of people weren't ready to do that in April. And it kind of felt like overwhelming. I'm a failure. I can't do this. This is too hard. Or I only know Zoom, but don't teach me anything else. Whereas we've learned that actually people can learn a lot of different platforms with the right support, and that there are a lot of ways with technology people can interact differently. So today we have closed captioning, we have French, we have English, we have talking, we have writing. And I think for young people, some neurodiverse people like to write what they think as opposed to say what they think, right? Some people like to turn their camera off and walk around and hum. And you can still do all of that when we're in this virtual space together. And maybe we can't do all those things, or getting to a place can be really challenging for some people when we do things in person. So more flexibility, but recognizing also that it doesn't really work for everyone. And we have to keep trying, I think, to find different solutions for all people.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And Tara, what about you in this context? Any social trends or research findings coming out at this early stage in this strange new, hopefully temporary existence, but of course there will be lasting effects. But anything coming out that surprises you in the way it affects the world of youth and young people, families living with brain-based disabilities?
I definitely think that initially we were looking at maybe some misrepresentation in the media, and really, I think almost an erosion of some of the decision-making capabilities. People weren't necessarily being consulted with regard to the very important decisions in their lives. But that being said, I really do feel that there's been an opportunity for creativity, for innovation, that is something that we keep seeing time and time again, from, you know, the inventors of the clear mask so that we can see people's mouths when they're speaking, to all sorts of creative opportunities to connect in a social way, from delivering packages to open together online. We definitely have been seeing, I think in many ways, this grassroots community activity, and that's helping us move forward, and I think pushing us toward making sure that we engage in that advocacy that's necessary at this time.
Obviously, parents might be are often informal caregivers, and of course, make up probably a pretty good portion of our audience tonight. Tara, what advice would you give to parents listening on this call who are feeling just exhausted and overwhelmed by this situation?
Yes, I think number one, the most important thing to remember is that you're not alone. Even, you know, the people on this call today, I'm sure that there are ways with the facilitation of our hosts to be able to get together to create those informal caregiving communities that we can all be a part of. I think the other thing that is always really important to remember is to contextualize success, to contextualize what's going on. And clearly your expectations need to be adjusted in relation to that. So cut yourself a break. Know that this is difficult for everybody, that there are people out there for you. I've been working on this myself and thinking about engaging in radical self-care. So that involves a lot of reflection, a lot of self-support. And, you know, if we're thinking about ways of making sure that we can support the advocacy of our children, for example, for parents on the call, I think it's important to remember that being a model of being empowered, of regulating your emotions, of following your passions, and of making sure that you are being represented in everything that you do. That goes really, really far. And reframing some of these notions at home. So, you know, if you're getting some pushback in certain areas, you can talk to your child about that being an example of advocacy, for example, and trying to make sure that you have the environment set up both for your well-being and to promote the self-determination and empowerment of your child. So having opportunities for making choices and really reflecting on that self component. This tends to be seemingly a time where people are reflecting, and we can use that again as another opportunity to really get to know yourself and support yourself.
Yeah, that is absolutely an opportunity in this time. I love that term too, engaging in radical self-care. That's important, of course. And you know, in terms of developing tools and strategies that could help children foster, again, you know, geared to parents out there, to help their children foster self-determination, advocacy, and any advice there?
Well, I think Tara had some fantastic ideas. There are actually some things I'd written down myself. But maybe to add to that, you know, taking the opportunities that are there, right? So when somebody says, I don't really want to do that, well, that is them voicing a choice, right? That's them advocating. That's great. And sometimes I don't want to do stuff either. So kind of recognizing in ourselves when we might have that same kind of reaction or tendency and that sort of space. There's lots of things we can teach. There's a time to teach everything. So I think there may be great opportunities and moments that are learning moments, and there are also times where it's just not meant to be, and that's okay. The other thing is that, you know, Tara, you mentioned this idea that you're not alone. And I think when it comes even to that teaching, as a parent, as a sibling, like, it's not always your job. And sometimes that exact same teaching gets listened to much better when someone else does it. And that's okay. And there's people that you can do that with. So for example, maybe you're trying to explain something about why it's so important to wear masks or why we really have to respect these ideas on physical or social distancing. And it's only going so far. And you're like, mom the nag, right? as an example. This happens in my house too, right? But sometimes when the doctor says it, it has a different weight, right? Or when a friend says it, or when a cousin says it. And even if it's that person giving the message online. So knowing how to ask other people, we can all be involved in sort of teaching skills and building the community. So it doesn't always have to rest on one person.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting advice. So sort of rely on the community, allow yourself to rely on the community more in this, unprecedented isolation. It's kind of more possible than ever in a weird way, and we should probably take advantage of that. Thank you so much, Yona, Tara. We're going to continue the conversation with you guys a little later, of course, but we're going to switch to our other panelists now, Esther and Kathy. If Esther could activate her video, that would be great. In the meantime, while we make that switch, we could throw to our second poll question. Maybe I'll cue it up here. Reflecting about strategies and tips as we've been talking about, we could take a look at poll question number 2. So this is the question: reflecting on the past 8 plus months of COVID, if you can believe it, what has been the most helpful strategy for you in these times? You could click all that apply or choose just one: accessing online in-person programming or services, participating in online in-person webinars or workshops, staying connected with family and friends, spending time in nature, practicing faith or connecting with religious cultural communities, or engaging in wellness activities like mindfulness, exercise, etc., playing the guitar, playing the oboe, anything like that, or other. So that's the second poll question. If you could answer that, that would be great. Kathy, thanks for joining us, by the way. Thank you so much for being here. Kathy, are you?
Nice to
Kathy,
be here.
Oh, there you go. I just want to make sure you're not muted. We're always on Zoom. We're always on these things, and the nightmare is the mute button. So we were talking about, the situation for parents out there. You're a parent. Maybe we can start off, as a proud parent, can you tell us from your perspective, what have been, instead of talking about the challenges off the top, why don't we talk about what have been the silver linings for you in terms of supports you've received in this time?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity to participate. So I would say, for our family, the opportunity for our daughter to be part of the communities, extending the communities that she already belongs to, have been tremendous successes. And the first is with the Miles Nadell JCC Access and Inclusion Program, which is a virtual program. And what it's done for her, she participated in it in person because it's in our neighborhood before COVID. And since COVID, it's given her the opportunity to expand her circle of friends because there's a lot more people on it, and different people than the people that she participated with in person. It's ongoing stimulation and learning on a whole variety of topics. So as Yona was just talking about, how to talk about things like masks and so forth. They're learning about current events. They're learning about health and safety. They're learning about wellness. They're learning about strategies for stress management, learning about what's happening in the world in terms of politics. So I think all kinds of exciting things, music and exercise. And I think the idea of having something that's structured every day gives her a real sense of purpose and focus. And in many ways, I think one of the other panels was talking about, getting there in terms of transportation can be really challenging, and doing it virtually is really easy. Expanding it to a much broader group of people and a much broader set of voices is a real plus. And the other thing I think sometimes for, in our family, I find that my daughter gets overwhelmed in person by a lot of people talking, a lot of noise, a lot of movement, a lot of stimulation. And in some ways, the virtual environment can be a bit more well-managed, gives everybody a chance to have a place and a voice. So I would say, she's staying connected. She's not as isolated as we were worried about. She's learning and growing, and she's staying very active. And the other I would talk about is an extension of her summer camp, which is Camp Ramah, a wonderful program that she's attended in person for 13 summers. And they have a program called Tikva. They've come up with a virtual program that not only involves the kids that she knew at camp, but kids from Camp Ramah all across North America. So again, it's an opportunity to expand and build on and leverage and grow the communities and connections that we're so fortunate to be part of.
It really has been pretty amazing. I mean, if you would have told me a month before this occurred that we'd be looking at 8+ months of relative isolation, I would have been terrified for my children and their progress. But there have been so many opportunities and constructive opportunities to develop them, even in this situation, that it's been really quite amazing. Esther, maybe I could ask you a question now, if you are there. I think I see you. Hi, Esther.
Hi.
Hi, how's it going? As a young adult, of course, you are a young adult. What do you want people to know about how COVID-19 has impacted you and your family?
So before COVID started, I had a productive life. I was working, learning new skills, and socializing with coworkers and friends. I was beginning to feel independent for the first time in my life due to the COVID lockdown. Everything stopped. I felt trapped at home and was very bored, discouraged, and resentful that I could not see my friends. I spent a lot of time in my room and isolated myself from my family. I had negative thoughts about how COVID had taken away the success I was feeling in my new life. My parents and siblings were experiencing changes in their lives and were also stressed. Their schedules changed and they were also home all the time with limited privacy and space.
Yeah, it's really impacted everybody, and it was such a shock to everybody. And I think a lot of us can really relate to your words and what you said there. In this time, though, what are some of the programs you became involved in with the community, and what would you like to share with others about your experiences with those programs?
What?
Have you taken part in any? Are you like in this COVID situation? Are you taking part in any virtual programs?
So Friendship Circle is a program that I have been involved in with first as a participant, and now I'm a volunteer. Friendship Circle has provided me with the opportunity to learn, to give back, and feel part of something very important. I am also part of something called the Revolution program and FC Connect. They're both programs that are for, well, the Revolution is a program for, it spreads for young adults, and it spreads awareness and inclusion. I've gone to schools and spoken to children about of all ages about differences and inclusiveness. FC Connect is another program which I'm part of as well, and but I'm a participant in this program. And this group, it helped me develop a social network of my own. I'm very proud of my two jobs. One is at De l'Ami Friendship Circle Bakery, and the other is at Zar Cafe and Catering. Both hired neurodiverse young adults. I also attended an EMSB program where I am receiving cooking and bakery related training and life skills training. I have made many new friends in the school, and I am grateful to be learning these skills that are so important for my independence, both now and in the future.
All right, that sounds amazing. And maybe last question, how have these organizations, we're talking about connection here and remaining connected in this situation. How have these organizations, have they helped you feel connected to others? Can you share with us why that's important to you to feel connected?
Okay, so yeah, they have. My OMED's social worker, Jackie Clement, has given me consent and support and guidance to remain positive and successfully manage and different responsibilities in my life. The manager of OMED Support Employment Program, Edina Markowitz, made it possible for me to be hired by De Lamy Bakery and Zara Cafe. I am so appreciative for all her support and guidance. All these community organizations have given me the chance to feel productive and independent. Earning an income has been amazing. Now I can contribute to my own expenses. And Friendship Circle is like a family to me. I've made solid and long-lasting friendships. Zara Cafe of Montreal, Share Choir, and OMEDs have all helped me feel connected to the community and create new social networks. This has always been very important to me. After having been isolated for so long with not enough to do but focus on my obstacles related to epilepsy, these organizations have given me the chance to prove these to myself that I have the potential and ability to succeed. My involvement and roles in these organizations has given me the chance to meet new people who offer me support, encouragement, praise, and recognition. This has helped me to improve myself, confidence, and take on new challenges in my different roles within these organizations. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Esther. And it sounds like you have so many roles out there in such a huge social and kind of professional network right now, even through this time. And that's probably pretty key to. I'm sure it's key to you feeling good, and it's key, and maintaining that is key to all of us feeling good in this situation. And we're all united in that sense. But Kathy, you imagine that COVID hits, and thanks so much, Esther. Again, great job there. So COVID hits, Kathy, and you heard Esther talk about this. It's quite a complex network that she relies on in many ways, as many of us do. But COVID hits, all that's gone, all that's disrupted. What did you do, and what generally can parents do to support their child during this time of increased social isolation?
Well, as I was saying before, and thank you, Esther, it's so great to hear all the wonderful things that you're doing and how you're continuing to learn and grow and connect with your community. And as I was saying in my other comments, I think where we started was where we were, which is the communities and the connections that we have with the JCC and with Camp Ramon, the TICFA program, but also trying to just kind of go, okay, what are the things that my daughter's involved in now, and is there a way to deliver those in another way? So in some cases, moving to virtual, in some cases not. We also looked at opportunities to think about, okay, we're in the house, we're in lockdown, we're in our neighborhood, we're not doing all the things we normally do. What are some of the skills, and what are some of the things that we can do? What are some of the things that we can learn in terms of independence that we don't typically think about day to day. So whether it's chores around the house or budgeting or meal planning or, engaging with people in the neighborhood in a safe, socially distant way. We spend a lot of time in the dog park, for example, with, that maybe during non-COVID times, we're also busy. Everybody's running from one place to another. We don't really have time to stand and meet. And we've met some really wonderful new neighbors. But I think the first place to start, but I think it's also, I know the parents here are all taking a deep sigh saying, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's challenging on top of everything else we do, and moving offline in our work lives or whatever, to try and coordinate where are those resources, what are those programs, are they going to fit, how do we adapt our daily life. But I would say, start where you are and look around, look at your friends, look at your family. I think there's a lot of people out there right now. We found a whole bunch of new people in our lives who are bored, isolated, frustrated, and have some time on their hands. And they want to connect as well. And we've had an opportunity to connect with them in a different way.
That's great advice. What about, we hear Tara talking about self-care in this time, the importance of self-care. What about that aspect? What advice do you have for parents to take care of themselves?
Yeah, I think we've talked about a few of these. I think breathing. In fact, I did take a mindfulness course at the Miles Nadell JCC, who's done a tremendous job of shifting very quickly to online programming. And I've personally found that quite helpful. I think, forgiving yourself a little. We just can't be too hard on ourselves. We can only do the best we can, and you can't do much more than that. And I think we all feel that in the world, and not just as parents, but with everything. You just, you do the best I can, and I think the other, which is a lifelong learning for me, and I have two wonderful children. One is 28 and one is 25. And after years of parenting, ask people for help, reach out. And I think a lot of people are a lot more willing than we might imagine that they might be. So I think, ask for the help, ask for the friendship, ask for the support. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are willing and want to be there for you.
So well said. I think you should become a parenting guru or something. It's great advice there. And maybe we could bring Tara and Yona back into the mix and leave Kathy up here as well. While we do that, I guess I'll introduce our third polling question. We weren't going to mention this, but these polling questions are a good transitional tool. So third polling question. Let's finish last one. Before going to our Q&A, these are questions that were pre-submitted by the public. So winter, as we all know, unfortunately, as we all feel, is at our doorstep. What would you like to see more of coming from organizations in your community within the context of COVID-19? And remember, these answers will be used by organizations to offer those services. So would you like to see workshops, webinars about diverse topics, mental health, parenting, etc., programs, services for family members or yourself, life skill programs, social skills, employment supports, housing supports, transition supports from school to community, for example, or other? So that poll question will come up and you can answer it. In the meantime, we have user submitted questions. Thank you to those who submitted questions in advance. The first question may be directed to either Tara or Yona. Let's say Yona, actually. To start off, are there any employment or volunteer opportunities in this time? Are there still opportunities for people with disabilities to volunteer or become employed? You tend to think that because it's COVID, I can't do anything. There must be nothing out there. Is that the reality?
I think it's always been a challenge in the disability community to find paid employment opportunities. So, I don't feel like I can say, well, here's something. I think it really depends on people's skills. One thing that has changed is you don't necessarily have to go somewhere to do a certain job anymore, right? So if you are comfortable with technology, there are things that you can do without leaving your home. And also, I know certainly at our hospital, there are certain things that people have expertise in that other people don't have expertise in. So if we want to know, what's going to work best in the disability community, we actually need to ask people in the disability community. So that's a kind of job that makes a lot of sense, right? Because you have a certain kind of expertise there. I mean, some people, are really good at using the phone. Some people are good at mailing or sending things to people. Some people do not feel like they can don PPE and they can go and help out in other ways. So whether it's where, if there's food that needs to be collected for a food bank, or if there's, different types of activities where we do need people to be involved, those are things that a lot of people can help with. I know people were doing like baking or preparing food or getting stuff from home and getting it ready to be packaged and sent to different people. So I think there's both volunteer and paid opportunities. But unfortunately, I think they're always hard to find. So I don't want to say there's just a whole bunch of things available, but ask around and work in your community, talk with people, talk with the JCC, talk with OMETS. There's great people in these organizations that have good ideas, and invent things if you don't see them there. Now is a time of creativity and invention, as we've already heard, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing about this pandemic is that it could serve to spur innovation, especially within neurodiverse communities. This is something that I think about often. Thank you very much, Yona. Screen time during the pandemic, as a parent, of course. By the way, I don't think I mentioned this. I am a parent of 2 autistic children. So, and as a parent, I never use screen time because I'm perfect, right? That's obviously not the reality for anybody. So with social interactions limited and activities in the community discontinued for the most part, obviously we're exhausted. We rely on screens to a certain extent. Kathy, is this true? Do you do this at all?
Well, I was just laughing, thinking that, before this call, I was on about 10 hours of Zoom calls at work.
Yeah, that's true.
And, raise your hand if you're not. If you are, it's, so I think it's part of the reality is that we have screen time. And I think, yes, you say, okay, too much screen time is not a good thing. Yeah, of course, too much screen time is not a good thing. But on the other hand, being isolated, not having anything to do, it can also be a challenge. And I think for everybody, and I saw one of the comments, a very good comment, some people don't know how to use screens or don't, aren't receptive to screens. And I think, like everything else, and this is, the challenge of us as all parents, but particularly when parents with kids with special needs is the balance thing. So I have to admit that 1 to 3, when Rebecca's at the JCC, that's when I book my work meetings. That's just what I have to do. And between 11 to 12 when she's on her other thing, and I kind of try and work around that. And then the rest of the time, I just do my best to try and say, okay, what else can we do? Let's walk the dog. Let's take the garbage out. Let's mail a letter. Let's check the mailbox. Let's do laundry. Whatever those things are, and everybody's family is different, and everybody's kid is different. But what are those other things? I think one of the things that the silver lining and the gift in a way is that we've all slowed down a bit. We're all home. We eat lunch together. We're there's nowhere to go and nothing to do in a way, and trying to play some games as a family, trying to just kind of spend a little time and maybe just slow things down. And I think the screen part is inevitable. I just don't know how else we get around it. If you have somebody who can access the technology and can use the technology to connect, then it's one of the many tools in our toolbox.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the question is when are you not on your screen these days? But Tara, specifically, maybe if you have any opinion on this, specifically as it pertains to respite, is the screen right now the most accessible way to relieve immediate pressure and obtain, that much needed respite right now?
Well, I definitely feel that it is a necessity, I guess, at this point. We're using it for work, for connecting socially. I think in many ways it's increased accessibility. So, we're seeing now employers were able to switch over to people working from home basically within 2 weeks. And so the kinds of things that would promote inclusive employment, for example, we're now seeing employers who are able to make the kind of accommodations that people with disabilities have maybe been asking for a really long time. And now we're seeing that actually this can be done and we can make this work. So, that being said, I think it's a format that can increase accessibility and inclusion, but it's also a format that can get exhausting. And I think we need to make sure that we have balance, as Kathy mentioned, give ourselves point to make sure to give yourself an eye break at least every few minutes to look away from the screen, even just a little bit over in the distance, just to help with the fatigue that comes from staring directly at the screen. Maybe it'll help with those wrinkles too, I don't know, that I'm developing. But yeah, the key is definitely balance. And I think thinking about the ways that these technologies are actually helping push us forward to increased accessibility and inclusion. And I think right now, the theme of opportunity in a pandemic we're talking about, and I think that there are many, and I'm excited about those as much as I recognize that things are also very difficult.
I agree.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Obviously, that's a huge topic for a lot of us. Just to tell you guys behind the scenes, if you want to share I know you guys have maybe submitted some questions while we're doing this webinar. If you could if you just post them in the chat, I'll be able to read them, and then I'll be able to direct them to our panel. So I know I said text me, but it's not realistic to get to my phone, so just throw them in the live chat. Another pre-submitted question, though, is related to exercise. We talk about screen time. That's sort of an antithesis to exercise, and it's extremely difficult to get exercise right now, especially when you have, if you have very hyperactive kids, it's really hard to get them to get their energy out. So this question is: my 22-year-old son with autism is not getting an opportunity to get any exercise. Would love some suggestions on how to engage this age group, so young adults in particular, in some fitness activities during COVID-19. I'm not sure who to target for this question. If anybody has any response to this or any ideas, please feel free to speak up. Exercise during the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question for all of us, right? And I think if we recognize that helps us think of solutions. I mean, some people just say get a dog. And I swear, having 3 young men in my house, they would never go for a walk just because, but when they have to walk a dog, it certainly is something that's helpful. But not everyone can get a dog. But there's functional reasons why we have to get exercise sometimes. So there might be something we want to get, or there might be something like someone was saying getting the mail, right? Or maybe maybe there's takeout food that's been ordered and we can do curbside pickup and we're picking that up, right? Or maybe we have to shovel the snow, unfortunately, which is becoming soon, right? So making sure we're dressed for success. I think it's helpful to do exercise outdoors for people who can get outside. Mobility wise, it's really important not just to get exercise, but to get fresh air. So we can't do all of our exercise inside our house in the same spot, right? So if we can get outside, I think that's really helpful. And even the getting dressed and getting ready to go outside and coming back in and taking everything off, that's exercise too, right? Making it interactive. There are examples, really nice example. I know I saw some in the chat box around fitness programs and things that can be engaging on Zoom. Maybe it's to great music you like, maybe it's with people you like, maybe it's a one-on-one thing. But there are ways, I think, to find fitness opportunities. And it's, again, reach out to your community here and learn tricks about what other people are doing. Remembering that it's just a certain number of times a day, a little bit of movement that's really important. But it's got to fit with things you're already interested in, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody have anything else to add?
Well, I was going to say, just sometimes it's small things like, get silly and have a kitchen dance party, put some tunes on. We listened to ABBA this morning at breakfast. Or, I found a couple of really short, I find it's hard to engage, for like an hour in a fitness class. But there's some really goofy and fun Instagram dance parties. There's one called Dance Church, which is, super, super fun and energetic. Some YouTube videos of just doing some little arm exercise, just like little things as opposed to, okay, now we have to exercise, because nobody does that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, maybe some do. We don't.
In my household, all the kids gang up and beat me up, basically. And that's the
Wrestle with dad is always
that's
a good
the outlet. It's wonderful. Some live questions are coming in. Maybe we could go to this. One for you, Tara. Are there parlor groups for parents? And I guess the question there is, you mentioned self-advocacy workshops. There's an interest in learning more about them from the perspective of our audience. But what about adults who don't like Zoom or can't relate to Zoom or the screen or are not that independent? What advice would you have for them?
Yes, well, there are definitely opportunities to be meeting in a virtual way. I know that there also have been some physically distanced ways of getting together for parents as well as for other young adults. And with winter coming, they might require some snowshoes or something of that nature, I guess, if they were going to move forward. But those are definitely possible. I know here in Montreal, a lot of the different community centers have groups, and also some of the organizations, local organizations, as well as I know that schools have been approached and have worked with parents to be able to find ways of connecting them together. There, like I said earlier, there might be ways of having us sort of connect. It's been really those grassroots initiatives that have taken hold, and I think have been really crucial for that kind of informal support and really for that quality of life. And some of them have involved, as Kathy was mentioning, the fun, silly times, because I think that's important as well. Not just talking about how things are difficult, but getting it out by dance or some other method to be able to lift the spirits. That's certainly been a big part of it as well. So a lot of parents are getting together, not necessarily to talk about their children or their lives, but to have fun and to find that informal support and people who just get it and they don't need to explain.
Yeah. Maybe I'll ask Esther. Esther, can I ask you another question just on that note about, these days it's COVID, it's really hard to get out there, really hard to get your energy out. You're sitting around, you're staring at your screen all day. And what do you do to get your energy out? Do you take walks? Are there any programs that help you get your energy out these days? Any advice?
So these days I actually, I've been very busy. Like I've said, I have 2 jobs, and I also go to friendship circle 2 times a week for school, and then and also I'm part of a sheer choir.
Oh, that's right.
Montreal Sheer Choir, because I love to sing. It releases all my stress and it brings a lot of happiness to me. So I personally think that singing would be like an amazing way to release stress for anyone.
Yeah, that's my stress reliever too, actually. I try to sing badly. But for the choir, you're in like a music video or something, right? What was that?
Yeah, it's recently been, we've recorded, we made like a choir, and it was a tribute to Leonard Cohen.
Cohen, yeah.
Yeah, Cohen. And we sang the song Hallelujah, and out of the whole entire Montreal Sheer Choir, a couple of us, we went to the studio one by one to record the song. And then, yeah, so like it was just like an amazing experience.
That sounds awesome. That's a, yeah, it's a great way to deal with it, singing, and especially in situations like that. And it sounds like you're doing more than just singing to sort of expend energy. You're in a recording studio, so that's awesome. Thanks for your answers, Esther. That's great.
Also,
we have another. Oh, go ahead.
I also think that art would be like another outlet to release stress. I do a lot of art, and I find that it helps me also a lot to release my stress.
That's amazing. Yeah, art's great too, for sure. We have another a live question coming here. I think I lost it. Oh, here we go. Thank you so much, Esther, by the way. From Ottawa, we have Madeline. 2 questions, and this is kind of interesting. How can we make online experiences more inclusive? Specifically, how can we coordinate the online offerings across the country so that more folks can get access to these amazing opportunities? And I guess that's where our organizations kind of step in. You know, a lot of community-oriented initiatives right now. How do you get it bigger? How do you make it national? And is there a necessity for that? Fiona?
So one thing I want to say is we're learning that there's different ways of interacting online. So there were really nice examples Kathy gave about things you could just watch quickly for exercise. We can do synchronous things, which is when we log in all at the same time. We can do asynchronous things, which means we can do it whenever we want. So I think we have to have a range of activities. So if you do something really good and anyone can participate because nobody's talking to them while they're participating, so it'd be like a recorded exercise class or singing activity, let's post it somewhere so everyone can find it after, right? Figure out kind of the privacy, security things around what can be shared, who's on it, share that stuff. But if you're doing a group where you want people to be talking with each other, so the group that Kathy was talking about that's happening at the JCC, if there's supposed to be people talking together and you got 50 people there at the same time, it's too big, right? So sometimes we have to think about who's in the group, and sometimes we're building a community with a smaller group and it needs to be that small for it to work. So I think we have to have this combination. And even I saw they started this in the UK right at the beginning of the pandemic. There was a group called Great Brews, and it was like basically outlining how to have chat and brew, or like chat and talking discussions. Like we need to teach a lot of groups how to facilitate smaller interactive things, and then capitalize on the great stuff we're doing that a lot of people can watch, so people can watch it at a later time. And I think our community organizations can help us by pulling some of those things together and saying, sure, this is a drop-in for everyone. It's like anyone can watch it. We've recorded it. And this is something that's small, but we're happy to teach you how to do something similar because it seems to be working really well.
I'd just like to point out, thanks, Fiona, that people are frantically posting links to the chat pane of groups, you know, kind of doing these very things, including, I think, Esther, the link to your choir too, maybe. But anyway, feel free to check out the chat pane. There's all kinds of stuff there. I think we're almost, we're actually going to wrap up on time here, which is pretty impressive, if I do say so myself. Any final words, any final thoughts from any of our panelists tonight?
Well, maybe I'll just say thank you again. This was such a pleasure to be a part of. It was a wonderful opportunity. The panelists were amazing. It was really great to meet you all and to participate in this way. And I do think that one of the most important things to remember is that, you know, we're all living in difficult times and doing a really good job. And that, you know, these are opportunities to do better. In developmental psychology, you know that the most growth comes after the chaos. So, you know, I think that that's on the way, and we're moving toward greater accessibility, more inclusion, and I think more connection, ironically, by being so isolated. And I really appreciate having been connected to all of you today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Those are great closing words. Thank you so much, Kathy, Tara, Yona, Esther. Esther, I see people in the chat pane using the phrase role model for young adults. They loved your words. Thank you so much for taking part. Thank you so much to all our panelists for their stories and insights tonight. You know, people joining, great turnout from right across Canada. I mentioned Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, other cities as well. We encourage you to circle to the organizations on this call for follow-up questions that can support you. We talk about self-care. That's a method of self-care. Look at the chat pane, a lot of interesting links to organizations there. Our goal tonight is that you're walking away with tools, strategies, and newfound awareness of what is out there. So important. And it's so important to unite for that purpose. We may come from different cities with different experiences and stories, but collectively, we're all in this together. Many that we've heard from tonight are some of the unsung heroes of this pandemic, and we thank you for all you're doing. Thanks everybody behind the scenes here tonight. You dealt with some difficulties there heroically, so thanks to all of you. And on behalf of myself, thank you for allowing me to take part in this great event. Stuff like this is amazing, and I'm so glad to take part in it. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Passing the floor now to Marianne, who will close up the evening for us with a final word.
Thank you, Paul, for leading us through a memorable evening, with a shout out to ACS for providing the captions, Alexia Cohen for providing our live French audio feed, our promotional partners for helping us to get the word out about tonight's webinar, and of course, a sincere thank you to our remarkable group of panelists, Tara, Yona, Esther, and Kathy, for your time and generosity in lending your voices to tonight's discussion. We are pleased to share that all attendees will be receiving a local curated list of resources tomorrow through email, and we encourage you to reach out to your respective partner organizations for additional information, as well as local resources to support your individual and family-specific needs. Your feedback is valuable to us. In the chat box, we've posted a link to a quick survey that you will also be receiving in our thank you email. We would really appreciate if you take a minute now to respond. Thanks to the generous support of the Azrieli Foundation, we are pleased to offer a second webinar to follow this discussion in February 2021, where we will be recognizing Jewish Disabilities Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month, JDAM, and focusing on neurodiversity and employment. Stay tuned for more details in the new year. Until then, we invite you to check out Inclusion Canada's and the Office for Disability Issues, Employment and Social Development Canada's upcoming free virtual 11th Annual Federal Policy Forum on Inclusion, happening December 3rd, which coincides with International Day of People with Disabilities. On behalf of OMETS, Miles Nadal JCC, Federation CJA, and UJA Federation of Greater Toronto, we wish you a good night and a restful rest of your evening.